So it's been a couple days, and let me catch you up with what's happened so far. So after we powered it on to make sure everything worked, I started to dive in to the Quad Cortex. Now this is by no means a review or a demo really of the Quad Cortex in whole. There's no way we could possibly do that. But I want to talk about how I specifically used it this last weekend for a solo performance and how I intend on using this rig. I basically learned enough just watching a couple of the intro videos for the Quad Cortex, and to be honest, this is the best UI that I've ever experienced on any kind of modeler or multi-effect. I find the touchscreen really useful, but mainly I was able to build my patch from scratch that I used this last weekend without any guidance and without really diving into the manual at all. I was able to figure it out, especially hooking it up to Cortex control. It was super easy to kind of build my preset. And one interesting thing to note is that I'm using this for not only my acoustic guitar, but also my vocal mic. So I do mostly instrumental performances, but I do sing on some songs. And so being able to have control over the way my mic sounds and mainly to be able to mute it for those instrumental pieces. And I'm able to do that right on my pedal board with my feet. So let me quickly walk you through the preset that I made and I used this last weekend, and then I'll kind of give you my post-gig analysis as a first-time Quad Cortex user in 2024. So this is definitely the lightest and most compact setup that I've ever had. Now I'm a big fan of the FM3, and you can see that I've got an FM3 and an FC6 foot controller down there. And I really love the Fractal Axe Effects universe. The Axe 3 generation I think I can't imagine how it could be much better than it is. It is still my go-to processing for effects for recording. But the Quad Cortex I think is pretty unbeat in its UI, and mainly its on-the-fly control. Being able to turn down specific frequencies on the fly if I'm noticing that it's a little too bright, like I experienced this last weekend, or being able to change the dynamic levels of the compressor on the fly just like it was a normal pedal on a pedal board is really hard to beat. So we've got a Pedal Train Metro 20. We've got two Lely Dual expressions, and obviously the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. And on the back, we've got the DC7 and the Chox Crux powering this whole pedal board. Now, these expression pedals do require power, but we're able to easily do that with the Chox Crux without having to take up 4 slots of the DC7. And at Sweetwater, you can get the bundle of the Quad Cortex with the Chox DC7 and the Crux. And this power supply is so thin that there's plenty of clearance with the stock feet on this pedal train. And it's not an angled board at all. And it just fits really nicely and perfectly in there. I highly recommend that be the way that you power your Quad Cortex. I have personally experienced some of the complaints with the stock power supply being slightly noisy, and it's also fairly flimsy. And I mean, this dual lock is really holding everything in place. It's not going anywhere. I fully trust it. I was able to, using the clearance of the dual lock with the height that it adds under the pedal, feed the expression and the power cable under so that there's no power, kind of coming from under the board. And it just makes everything a little cleaner and, lessens the risk of stuff being yanked or caught, pulling it out of the case or on the stage or what have you. There'll be a link in the description below where you can buy this entire setup from sweetwater.com. Now, the one thing I will warn you about building this setup, if you choose to do so, it will really make you reconsider why you have as many pedals as you do sitting on the floor behind you and stacks of amps. I haven't been able to dive all the way into the quad Cortex by any means. It is so capable of doing so much more than I'm utilizing it for in this setup. And the nice thing is that I'll be able to take this exact setup and just have a different preset and be able to cover a completely different range of sounds with electric guitar using amps and cabs and whatnot. I mean, to be honest, this is gonna be the fly rig as well. If I'm flying out, this is the most compact, portable, lightweight, but can do everything. It's got a little bit of weight to it, but for everything that it can do, I mean, I'm just not sure that it's able to be beat. It worked really well. The one thing that I do need to look on the user manual is how to access the global EQ from the touchscreen on the device here. I kind of preset the global EQ to my monitor, but once I got to the gig and was, at full volume, I found it to be a little brighter than I wanted it to be. And so being able to access that global EQ was kind of what I was attempting to do, but luckily I was able to access the EQ of both my mic and the guitar on their own separate effects chains and simply roll off some of the high end. And I think that little experience right there maybe is the last straw that really sold me on this being the ideal setup for me for acoustic guitar. And the other thing, having two XLR outs, is I'm able to separate the guitar and the vocals for when I have a trusted sound guy. I'm not dealing with front of house or monitor mix or anything, but I still have control over muting the mic and effects. But with the touch screen, I'm able to configure the XLR ports to be multi-output, so therefore I'm balancing everything in case I don't have a sound guy. If I just want to get one XLR and it's everything for these solo performances. That would be even difficult to do if you were kind of piecing each individual piece as separate pedals in a direct box. Being able to kind of change the outputs on the fly like that is fairly unheard of, and that makes this so flexible and something that makes me feel even more comfortable that no matter what that I'm going to show up to, I know that I'm going to very quickly be able to give the sound guy plug-in exactly what they need, what I want to hear from it. And I think that, makes a huge difference if you're having to deal with changing the sound, getting rushed for sound check and line check. That affects your performance, I think. So anything that you can do to make that as smooth and quick and easy of a process as possible, I think is going to make you have a better time, enjoy your performance more, and I think you'll play better. Something else I'm really looking forward to being able to do is capture some of the stuff here in the studio. There's some amps in here that I think more people need to experience, some version of playing through at least. And being able to do that, or some of the pedals, as we're demoing a pedal or showing you, how I use something in my setup. If you're into the quad Cortex, you can play along with that same sound as you're watching the video. That's something I really like to do, and something I'm looking forward to doing with the quad Cortex, and especially in comparison to some of the Fractal and other modeling devices out there. At the end of the day, this rig is really capable of doing so much. But if all I ever use it for is acoustic solo performances, I think it still hits above its weight for other comparable setups. As always, links in the description down below. Hit up your Sweetwater sales engineer, shout out Brian, and see what kind of quad Cortex rig you could put together. And until next time, I've been Colin.